I'm going to talk about thinking about practicing exhibition histories through some of my own recent research. Exhibition histories of South Asia and Britain, I think, have largely focused, for very good reason, on the Victorian period, the 19th century, the age of the great exhibitions, and also perhaps the post-war period. And Brynda made this point this morning, actually, about the spectre of the modern, and her paper raised, I think, about thinking about an exhibition in the 1930s. What do we do with exhibitions in this period, somehow caught between the push and the pull of the Victorian and the post-war? So I'm kind of interested in this period in between. And I want to raise broader questions about what exhibition histories are, and how we go about recreating and reconstructing the historic exhibition. What material, what archives, what documents, what records do we use? What is available to us? And I think this is a key question, and what is not. Exhibition histories are, and Solo's just made this point really, are always partial ones, are always open-ended and never can be definitive. The hard data of the event deposited in the archive can never fully record that fragile ecosystem of an exhibition and all its various afterlives. So exhibitions tell stories, often many and not just one, but historians also tell stories, many of them, and never just one either. And so what I think an exhibition can do, I think an exhibition histories can do, is evocatively reimagine art within a particular environment. They make us think about the encounter between objects, between bodies, within particular spaces and particular times. But then I think as a historian, also make us think about our own encounter with those histories as well. So as well as that forensic kind of mining of the archive, I also want to argue for the imaginative potential of exhibition histories. And I think we need to do that the deep dendrochronology, the deep digging, but also then use that material and kind of go and dream with it. Especially for me, I'm thinking exhibitions, this is one I've been working on, 1911, the Festival of Empire. What was it like to visit this site? And again, India had a court in this exhibition. The Crystal Palace, as many of you will know, was moved from its site in Hyde Park shortly after the Great Exhibition closed in 1851 and was reopened in the suburban South London site of Sydenham. And this became one of the kind of exhibition arenas like White City in London and hosted many of these international exhibitions. But some of these exhibitions, perhaps because they've been seen as a bit more popular, have fallen off some of the map of the exhibition histories that have become known to us more broadly. So kind of imagining visiting this site and sort of then zooming in from these huge exhibitions as well, they're sort of overwhelming. And I think that's something perhaps we all encounter, the overwhelming amount of information, catalogue, records, data that we have to encounter, we have to sift through and sort out when we are doing our exhibition histories. So when I started to think about the display of Indian art and material culture at the Festival of Empire in 1911, again, it'll be an experience familiar to you all, going to the archives, going to use archives at the Sydenham Palace Museum, the India office, and doing that kind of searching for the things you want to find, don't you, the installation shot. As many of us know, a lot of us do actually sit at home and Google things and find postcards on eBay. And here I found this Festival of Empire, the Indian court, an external view of the architecture. And so I think as well there's this kind of process of bringing all our materials together from all different sources. And that sort of eBay style of research, I think is actually really, it might sound facile, but it's an important point, I think, about often when we're looking for invitation cards, for catalogues, you know, they're often not in the official archives as well, is what I've found with some of the work I've been doing. Again, the critical reviews only tell you so much. So it's this kind of diverse sources and sifting to piece together in this patchwork of information to try and think about the historic exhibition. in researching this exhibition in 1911, I knew that the India Society that Brynda had mentioned had been heavily involved with this exhibition. And not only was it a display of historic art and artifacts, but also organised in part by Ananda Coomaraswamy, was a range of work by living contemporary artists in India, Nandalal Bose and Rabindranath Tagore amongst them. So again, it made me think about what was this experience of going to a kind of festival of empire, a very colonial display, but also encountering modern and contemporary Indian art in this same space as well. So thinking about some of those tensions, some of those juxtapositions as well. And of course, and just to say, the other thing that I knew had been put on display inside the Indian court were copies of the Frescoes of Ajanta. And these copies were made in 1910, 1911. Sonal has done some work on this as well, by the British artists Christiana Herringham, Dorothy Larcher, and also with the assistance of Nandalal Bose, Sanjanath Gupta, Kumar Haldar as well. And that team of artists had copied the frescoes over a series of several months, and then this was their first display in London in 1911, only a few months after the tempera had dried on the cartridge paper they used to make these frescoes, these copies, and then bring them back to London. So of course, again, my mind was, as I was reading these catalogues, essays, these critical reviews of what in the Times was very active about recording this festival. You know, what was it like? What was in there? And again, many of you will appreciate this moment of finding what you want. And, you know, it took me quite a long time. And there it was. And again, what do you do with this information? And so in this photograph in the it found in the Journal of Indian Art and Industry, published in 1911, was a photograph of the interior of the India court. And again, one thing I would, I think what Saloni was saying about excess as well, the excess of exhibition histories, just within this one photograph, I felt there was so much to do, so much information, this stuffed taxidermy of the Bengal tiger in the middle there, the festooning of this court, the hanging, the textile hangings, the metalware that was displayed in the very museological glass cases on the ground floor. But then on the upper level, here we can see, and this is where the Ajanta copies were arranged, apparently mixed in with paintings, mainly works on paper, by Tagore and Bose as well. So you've got quite an interesting, there's two levels of an exhibition space here within this one sort of, it was a kind of octagonal building which had previously hosted a panorama of the siege of Paris. And as well, when you read records of what's going on around this court, you arrived at it by going on a miniature railway. You had the fun fair going on. There was a roller coaster next to it. So again, this sort of photograph, in a way, seals off this court from this incredible pageantry, spectacle, hubbub. And again, I'm not sure, perhaps in our empirical archival forensic detail, and I've been very guilty of this myself, I'm not sure my writings always evoked the atmosphere and thinking about the multiple narratives that one exhibition can create as well, and that there's no one reception history either, that trying to imagine how different audiences in 1911, and very sophisticated exhibition goers as well, as Saloni mentioned, from 1851, people have been experiencing this kind of multifaceted, spectacular display. So I think trying to imagine the environment and the sort of sensory experience is something that it's imperative for us to do, not to hermetically seal these exhibitions off. And I think that's something that We often use these photographs as documents, as records of exhibitions, and especially the installation shot. And I've been kind of tracking that across different papers. It's quite interesting when you see the exhibition space populated with people, and then I think you start to go to work. What you often don't see are photographs of curators in exhibition spaces as well. We've seen, you know, the audience often posed, kind of having a very meaningful chat in front of an artwork, but often they're empty spaces as well. They're captured that before it opens to the public. So how do we repopulate exhibition spaces? How do we bring back some of that environment, that ecosystem, and not just use these as neutral, the photographs, the documents we find in the archive, not just as neutral records, but go to work on them as art historians. These, of course, are photographs of visual representations in their own right. And I think we need to use those skills that we would use with any other kind of visual work to think about the kinds of stories, narratives, and readings that we produce. And I'll end it there because I know we want to discuss lots together.